after much deliberation, the judges have come up to a decision, and I have to say it was such an honor being in the presence of three of the leading individuals in the education sector discussing such a controversial, such a hot debate. I'd like to invite Mr. Rajasingam to give his views, a short summary of what the debate was like.
Good afternoon. I know you all are more interested in the food right now. I would be. Quite obvious. Now, debate was entertaining. The afternoon has been a wonderful afternoon. The two main areas they're looking at is with the National Higher Education Blueprint, focusing on increasing entrepreneurship education, education related to entrepreneurs, trying to create more entrepreneurs. Everybody is fascinated by, Jack Ma, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and there's some preoccupation now that we have to try and create Malaysia's equivalent of a Steve Jobs or an Uber and so on. But a lot of these companies actually, if you look at it in the US, overvalued. The market in America is very different. So a company can be trading at 2,000 times the PE ratio or 3,000 times. It's actually quite odd. Now, so the first thing is to look at the entrepreneurial side, and the second aspect was to look at governance, where now the ministry actually does most of the control in public universities, how much they give out in terms of grants, what courses the university should run, how funding is allocated, resources, etc. To try and hand over a bit more of that power, to have greater autonomy as far as the universities are concerned. So these were the two main areas which today's debate focused on, because there are lots of other areas in the blueprint. I think both, I don't know whether they call them contestants or debaters, did fairly well. But from a decision point, I'd like to let my colleague here, Professor Emeritus, to tell you the decision. He may want to add a bit more suspense and then hand it over to Dr. Elizabeth on the left, because otherwise they have no work to do here. We have been fed, we should all speak. Okay, Professor Emeritus?
I thought we gave the honors to you. Be the spokesman. We have deliberated as it is a close debate. Both had some valid points. Some gave better examples. But at the end of the day, I still get confused with the names. The one on this side. What's it? Noel. Yeah. Noel, we thought had a slight edge over Mark. We were looking for more concrete examples and more positive statements from Mark that he missed the chance, I thought. There were areas that you could have really added on, and that's not quite missing. And we thought that because of the missing part, we gave a slight edge to Noah.
Dr. Elizabeth would like to say something.
I would.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'd like to get down to brass tacks. Both speakers were very interesting, and like Professor said, we did decide at the end of the day to award it to Noel rather than Mark. It was quite close. However, if I can offer a bit of advice to Mark, it would be not to be afraid to do a lot more research before, because I think we felt that your arguments lacked depth. And if you had done a little bit more homework around the subject, you may have been a more formidable debater. Because as a speaker, you're a good speaker. But waffling just a little bit, if I could say that. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Mark, I don't think I expected homework today. Yeah, so what do we do next? The thing about today's topic is something very close to our hearts here, all three of us. The Malaysian education system is an utter mess. It is terrible. A lot of work needs to be done. And the question is whether people will take that responsibility and whether the right type of things are being done. Personally, I feel we can have 1 million blueprints, but if it's not implemented properly and the proper people put in place to carry out the blueprint in implementation, and then to have that conviction, to have that consistency, instead of coming up with another blueprint 1 year later or 2 years later, which is very typical in our case, that I think is what is essential. So, from a personal standpoint, I actually look at it this way. If the ministry or the government now wants to make universities more autonomous and they look at doing things, that is a good thing. But there should be checks and balances. The problem we have now is the people who are currently in place are not used to working in that kind of environment where things are done in an autonomous sense. Hence, a change of mindset is required. A lot of training will be required, and for them to realize that there's a shift. Also, being a person, Albert, myself, Prof has got the benefit of having been both in the private and public sector. Albert and myself have both been in the private sector. And if you look in Malaysia, there are the public universities, your University Kebangsaan, UIA and all of that, and then there are the private colleges and university colleges, and some who have recently become universities. The problem we have taking place now is sometimes even the racial numbers in these universities, they are very much polarized by race. So in the public universities, you have a higher proportion of Malay. In the private universities and colleges, you have a higher proportion of Chinese and Indian students and less Malay students. These things have to be sort of worked on slowly. And also, for terms of financial background, those in the private universities and colleges tend to be a bit more affluent as compared to those in the public universities. The problem we have is this: we can have a good education system, but I think the ministry should be made accountable for decisions, because most of the time decisions are made, but there's no accountability, and this slows the private sector. So instead of the blueprint just including entrepreneurial education for the graduates, I think there should be a greater sense of entrepreneurship. I'm not suggesting they become entrepreneurs to make money for themselves, but I think they should get a commercial understanding of how institutions operate. Now, we are, say for us, the college, I give you a simple example. Rip Van Winkle, there's this great example given in America. It's no different in Malaysia. That if Rip Van Winkle woke up 200 years after his sleep, the one thing that he would recognize in America would be the education system. Because that's the one thing that hasn't changed for 200 years. People are still slogging for exams, memorizing things, going to exams, and then vomiting or regurgitating the things out. And there's no choice. People have not realized technology has made a lot of changes. Today, if a kid wants to know something, yesterday my daughter was in the car with me, and then she suddenly asked me, Queen, the main singer, Freddie Mercury, what was his name? Now, I can't remember. So I said, just Google it, which is what she just went straight away. It's Farah, this thing, he's from Iran, his parents were born here and there. And that's what people should realize. Now, the blueprint talks for people looking at thinking skills, looking at leadership, looking at critical thinking. They're looking at all these skills. But the question is, they aren't doing it. It's quite nice to have this beautifully drafted blueprint, but I think the powers that be, those in the ministry, the civil servants, they aren't ready for it. And the first thing should be to get them, not think, okay, it's beautiful to have these beautiful posters, the 11 shifts, the key things. Question is, what are we doing to get them to understand what is at stake? And there should be greater accountability, because always people have to apply for licenses, for this, and then you can just say, no, we're not giving you this or we're not giving you that, but you'll never know why. So I think when we're looking at this, when they talk about autonomy, there should also be, historically when the government should have to explain, the civil servant should have to explain why something is the case and what can be done, and to give people a bit more freedom so people can grow. Simple examples, like as an institution, we do a lot of things which are a little bit off. One year we got a delay in our approvals because I brought a bunch of professors down from England to teach 50 hours each. And all of a sudden when you look at it, they said, well, what you're supposed to teach is 100 hours. But now with these foreigners coming to teach 50 hours, you're teaching 150 hours. So you have taught the students too much. So please, it's a show cost. Please justify why the students were given extra 50 hours of classes. At which point I was, well, they didn't have to come if they didn't want to. We flew them down business class, put them in a hotel, and paid them, it's 150 ringgit an hour, 150 pounds an hour, you know, to get this thing done. But the thing is, it didn't fit within the parameter of what is understood. So creativity, therefore, is effective. So the thing, what we have to do to move forward is, I think, seriously, while the blueprint is great, there are some great ideas in the blueprint. Things have to be changed. I give you a simple example. Now I'm debating myself. But since there's an audience, why not? You know? Education. We have come up with a free education portal. We have put the entire Malaysian school syllabus online from Form 1 to Form 5. There are 2,000 over videos there. We funded this ourselves. So we spent 2 million ringgit. We spent 100,000 every month. We add more and more videos. And then next year, by the end of this year, next year, we're going to put the primary school syllabus up. And then we're going to go to the kindergarten. Now the idea here is, this then gives them content. Now when we looked at the blueprint, when we looked at things like One Bestari, or when they looked at, you know, having Wi-Fi in the schools and so on, the best part was this: no budget was allocated to create content. So now, in actual fact, the main content that is out there is ours, which was created by us to be given away for free. So sometimes I think people have to take a step back and look at it. And when we create this content, then the question becomes, how do we get it out? The private sector, I mean, people like all of yourselves here, are going to have to do a lot of things for yourselves. Unfortunately, because people are still confused as to what they're trying to do. And the problem with a lot of the civil service, regardless whether it's government, I'm not pro-government, I'm not talking about politics. I'm not a politician. All I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, foundations like AMMA, what you all are doing is a fantastic thing. You know, and you should give yourself a super round of applause. Because if it weren't for people like you, people at AMMA Foundation, a lot more will be deprived. You can't expect to do a lot or everything. But what you do with the resources you have, the people who help, that's what's fantastic. Coming together as a community, coming here, recognizing achievements, you know, pooling your resources, getting funding, giving out loans, and so on. And this is where, I mean, like us, August 2nd, we're doing a BAC Challenges Run. The run is actually for the disabled. We are sponsoring a run which is going to be on the Dataran Merdeka for fighting for equality and inclusivity among disabled, to enable autistic, Down syndrome, blind, deaf children to study in the school, the regular school, in an organization called Challenges and Traded Clubs. So we work with them. So in the last 2 years, we have worked with 37 organizations, ranging from WA, Women's Aid Organization, to Tech Outreach for Single Mothers, to Education for Free Education. We work with tons of organizations, purely because a lot of people are being left behind. 40% of our population is below the poverty line. The only answer is actually education. Otherwise, nothing else is going to be able to help. And we've got to hang in there and try and get these people out of the rut they're in, and pull them in. And actually, if each one of us can help one person, the job is there, and they help another person, the job is there. It's going to take some time, but that's what we go for. We have just forgotten to ask anybody for help in terms of the disabled run. We said, right, fine, we'll do it here. We'll get people on board. We have to be responsible as individuals and as corporate citizens. We have to do things ourselves. Like AMMA Foundation, I will be very happy to work with you. You tell us whatever we can do, you know. in terms of scholarships, in terms of, partly in terms of activities, whatever it is, we will be very, very happy to help. Okay?